through habits that go unnoticed. Pause. That's the paradox. Your energy, your mood, your words, your ability to love deeply or remain unbothered doesn't depend on massive life changes. It depends on the subtle patterns you repeat each day, most of them invisible to the outside world. And these patterns, when not mastered, become your prison. They dictate how you speak under pressure, how you respond to disrespect, whether you attract peace or chaos, whether you build intimacy or destroy it. So today, we are not speaking of success in the worldly sense. We are speaking of self-mastery, not for applause, but for inner alignment, for the type of graceful power that no one can take from you, because it is cultivated within. Let us now walk together through these daily habits, small on the surface, but profound when practiced with awareness. When a woman wakes up in the morning, the world has not yet made its demands on her. In those quiet, early moments, she stands at the edge of a choice, whether to meet the day with scattered noise or silent strength. There is a wisdom that says, how you start your morning is how you carry your energy into the world. And that energy, more than your words or appearance, becomes the first language others read from you. That's why the first daily habit every woman must master is not about doing more. It is about being still. Stillness is not the absence of thought. It is the act of not attaching to thought. It is the discipline of entering the day from within, rather than from without. In Eastern traditions, the inner world is seen as the origin of all that unfolds outwardly. If your mind is cluttered, your actions will be unfocused. If your heart is restless, your words will carry tension. That is why a woman who trains herself to begin her morning in silence, reflection, or mindful breathing does not just calm her mind. She reclaims her authority over the tone of her life. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient truth. When a woman starts her day with just 10 minutes of intentional silence, before checking messages, before speaking, even before movement, her cortisol levels stabilize. The frontal cortex, responsible for clarity and decision-making, becomes more active. This means she responds to life from her higher awareness, not from old emotional loops. Over time, this builds emotional resilience, a trait more attractive than any physical beauty. There was once a woman in her 50s who shared her experience at a wellness retreat in the mountains. She had spent her entire adult life raising children, working 2 jobs and always rushing. Her body had become tense, her moods unpredictable, her relationships strained. I lived in reaction, she confessed. It was like the world pushed me, and I had to push back. But something shifted when she began a daily practice of waking up at 5:30 a.m., lighting a candle, and sitting in silence for 15 minutes. No phone, no words, just breath. After several weeks, she noticed something peculiar. Her adult son spoke to her more gently. Her co-workers responded to her presence with more respect, and she no longer cried at the smallest frustrations. Stillness had softened her inner world and strengthened her outer presence. She had not changed the world around her. She had simply returned to herself. The feminine spirit is deeply intuitive, but intuition cannot operate in noise. It whispers, it does not shout. That's why this morning practice is not merely spiritual, it is practical. A woman who listens to herself before the world speaks to her develops a calm nervous system. This is her greatest protection in a world that often rewards urgency over wisdom. This is how she starts to cultivate emotional discipline, not through suppression, but through inner anchoring. When a woman begins her day grounded in stillness, her relationships shift. She no longer demands peace from others. She brings peace into the space. Her partner feels safer to be vulnerable. Her children are less reactive because they sense her presence is consistent. Even in conflict, she holds a quiet center. She does not chase, she does not plead, she pauses. And in that pause, she sees things more clearly. She learns that not every comment deserves a response, not every invitation must be accepted, and not every problem is hers to fix. This habit, though simple, is one of the most radical acts of emotional self-respect. It says, before I pour into the world, I will sit with myself. That stillness becomes her sanctuary, and from it, her strength arises. Yet, stillness alone is not enough. We must understand the rhythm of our body, the language of our breath. This leads us to the second daily habit every woman must master, regulating the emotional body through conscious breathing. We are born knowing how to breathe properly. Deep, full, and rhythmic. But over time, through stress, trauma, and cultural conditioning, women begin to hold their breath, especially during emotional tension. They breathe shallowly into the chest, not the belly. And this tells the body, we are under threat. Without realizing it, many women live in a constant low-grade fight or flight state. Not because of real danger, but because their breath tells their nervous system to brace for it. Here's something neuroscience confirms: the breath is one of the only functions that is both automatic and within our control. This means it is a direct bridge between the unconscious mind and conscious awareness. When a woman learns to return to her breath, not just during meditation, but throughout the day, she sends a powerful signal to her body: I am safe. Emotional safety is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Without it, a woman reacts rather than responds. She over-explains, she people-pleases, she becomes overly defensive. But when her breath is slow and grounded, her entire energy communicates calm confidence. This has a magnetic effect. Her partner feels emotionally held without being controlled. Her friends feel seen without being judged. Even strangers respond with unexpected warmth. Why? Because people are wired to feel others' nervous systems before they even hear their words. I once heard a story of a school teacher in her 60s who had struggled for years with anxiety and chronic fatigue. Her doctor prescribed medications, but nothing brought lasting relief. Eventually, she was introduced to a simple breath practice. Inhale slowly for 4 counts, exhale gently for 6. She practiced this 3 times a day, especially before entering her classroom or engaging in difficult conversations. Within a month, she noticed her heart rate was lower, her thoughts less chaotic. She had more patience with her students and less guilt after disciplining them. Her relationships improved, not because others changed, but because she began to live in a regulated state. The breath had become her anchor. In relationships, breath creates space between stimulus and response. A woman who breathes before reacting becomes less emotionally entangled. She doesn't interrupt, she listens. She speaks slower with precision. This doesn't make her passive, it makes her powerful. Because presence is power, and presence begins with the breath. Even the physiology supports this. Deep belly breathing activates the vagus nerve, which governs parasympathetic calm. This lowers blood pressure, reduces inflammation, and increases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. So when a woman breathes consciously, not only is she calming herself, she is creating emotional availability. That is how trust is built, not only in others but within herself. There's a quote from an old Taoist text: "The wise woman breathes from her heels." It's a poetic way of saying that her breath reaches deep into her body, rooting her like a mountain. She is not easily moved by storms. She may feel the rain, but she does not collapse under it. In the modern world, women are often told to move faster, push harder, speak louder. But there is a deeper wisdom available: move slower, breathe deeper, speak less. And when you do speak, let it come from a place of calm truth. Breath is not just a tool for relaxation, it is a discipline of presence. It trains the emotional body to remain open, but not reactive. And in romantic relationships, this is a secret strength. During tension, instead of escalating, she breathes. During silence, she does not fill the space with fear, she inhales trust. She begins to embody emotional stability. This is the kind of presence that inspires respect, not just affection. Imagine a couple in conflict. The man raises his voice. The old pattern might be for the woman to match his volume or shut down in silence. But a woman who has trained her breath pauses. She grounds herself before responding. She slows the rhythm of the conversation. She does not need to control him. She simply regulates herself. And in that moment, she shifts the dynamic, not with dominance, but with calm. This is not about perfection. There will be days when the breath is shallow, when emotions overflow, when silence feels unreachable. But the practice is not about getting it right every time. It is about returning. Again and again. That's where mastery begins. In the return. There is a sacred power in a woman who wakes early, sits in stillness, and remembers how to breathe herself back to center. She no longer looks to the world to make her feel safe. She becomes the safety. She no longer waits for someone to calm her. She calms herself. And in that space, she becomes the kind of woman whose presence is healing, simply because she has made peace her daily practice. In life, it is not the event that shapes us, It is our response to the event. And yet, most people are not responding, they are reacting. These are two very different states of being. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often unconscious. It comes from past wounds, from ego, from fear. A response, however, is measured, intentional, and rooted in presence. The difference between the two may appear subtle, but the consequences are not. For a woman seeking emotional balance, peace in her relationships, and inner strength, the ability to observe before reacting is not just a habit. It is a path to self-mastery. Imagine this: a woman walks into a room where her partner sits silently. He doesn't look up. She feels a pang in her chest. Her mind begins racing. Is he upset with me? Did I do something wrong? Why is he ignoring me? And before she's aware of it, she has slammed her bag on the table or asked in a sharp tone, "What's wrong with you?" The tension escalates. The evening is now filled with invisible walls and emotional distance. Now imagine the same woman, but one who has cultivated the habit of observing her inner state before reacting. She still walks in, notices his silence, and feels the same initial wave of discomfort, but she pauses. She breathes. She names the emotion silently. "I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling unseen." And instead of confronting him with irritation, she offers space. Maybe she sits beside him quietly. Maybe she says with gentleness, "You seem quiet. Is everything okay?" That shift from reaction to observation creates emotional safety. It builds trust. It preserves connection. This is the essence of inner work. Learning to witness your own emotions without letting them control you. The Buddhist tradition speaks of this as watching the river without jumping in. Emotions are like water. They move, they surge, they settle. But we are not the water. We are the awareness behind it. The more a woman practices this, the more she begins to see patterns. She notices how certain tones trigger her. She observes that fatigue makes her more sensitive. She realizes that unresolved wounds from childhood often fuel present-day conflict. And with each insight, she becomes less reactive and more responsive. From a psychological perspective, this practice of observation engages the neocortex, the rational, thoughtful part of the brain, over the amygdala, which governs fear-based reactions. Over time, this rewires the brain for patience, clarity, and emotional flexibility. One woman once shared how this principle changed her marriage of 30 years. Her husband, a quiet man, often retreated into silence during arguments. This used to enrage her. "Why won't you talk to me?" she would demand, interpreting his silence as rejection. But after learning to pause and observe her own emotional reactions, she began to approach these moments differently. She would feel the old fear rise, acknowledge it, but choose not to act on it. One evening, instead of confronting him, she simply said, "When you go quiet, I feel distant from you. I want us to stay connected." To her surprise, he opened up. "I just don't always have the right words," he admitted. That single moment softened years of tension between them. Because she had observed rather than reacted, connection became possible. We are not taught to pause. We are taught to perform, to defend, to respond quickly. But emotional maturity comes from learning that not everything requires your immediate response. Not every criticism is about you. Not every disagreement is a threat. Sometimes the highest wisdom is in restraint. Eastern martial arts emphasize this deeply. The master does not strike first. She waits. She reads energy. She only moves when necessary, and when she does, it is precise. In life, this principle applies beautifully. A woman who observes her own reactions gains freedom from being pulled into unnecessary battles. She becomes deeply discerning. She no longer wastes energy on drama. She knows her peace is sacred. In relationships, this changes everything. Because relationships are not destroyed by what is said once. They erode slowly, from unchecked reactions, sharp words, unresolved assumptions. But if a woman can introduce even a small pause between emotion and expression, she breaks the cycle. That pause is power. It may come in the form of walking away for 5 minutes, or taking a breath before replying to a difficult message. It may be choosing silence over sarcasm. It may be journaling emotions before speaking them aloud. Whatever form it takes, the core principle is this: witness first, then choose. There's a powerful quote by Viktor Frankl: "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." This space is what the reactive mind fears, but the awakened woman honors. To observe before reacting is not suppression, it is sovereignty. And sovereignty in a woman draws a different kind of relationship. One that is based on truth, not drama. One that invites mutual respect, not power struggle. But how does one develop this habit, especially after years of living on emotional autopilot? It begins with the practice of emotional detoxification, the fourth habit every woman must master. Every day, we clean our homes, we wash dishes, we rinse our bodies, but few of us clean our emotions. Yet emotions, like physical dirt, build up. They cling to conversations left unresolved, to criticism not yet processed, to sadness pushed aside. Over time, they weigh the body down, they tighten the chest, they cloud the mind. They show up as irritability, fatigue, resentment, or emotional numbness. Just as the body needs cleansing, so does the heart. Emotional detoxification is not a dramatic process. It's subtle, daily, and quiet. But it is essential for maintaining relational clarity and inner vitality. One powerful tool for this is reflective journaling. At the end of each day, a woman sits with her emotions, not to fix them, but to let them be seen. She might write, "Today I felt overlooked when no one acknowledged my efforts. I felt tired after giving too much in a conversation that wasn't mutual. I felt joy when my daughter hugged me." This practice is like sweeping the emotional floor. It prevents dust from turning into disease. A story comes to mind of a woman who had suffered through years of silent frustration in her marriage. She never spoke her disappointments. She didn't want to be a burden. But over time, those unspoken emotions turned into resentment. She stopped touching her husband's hand. She began snapping at her children. She felt emotionally heavy all the time. Finally, after attending a mindfulness workshop, she began a simple daily practice, writing one letter a day, not to send, but to express. Sometimes to her husband, sometimes to her past self, sometimes to her deceased father. Within 3 weeks, her face softened, her body relaxed, her laughter returned. When emotions are expressed safely, they no longer poison the present. Another method of emotional detox is time in nature. Nature has a way of absorbing emotional noise without judgment. A woman who walks slowly under trees, listens to birds, or watches clouds is unknowingly grounding herself. She is releasing energy. She is reconnecting to something larger than her mind. Psychologically, this process helps the nervous system regulate. Cortisol levels drop. The body returns to homeostasis. Spiritually, nature reflects impermanence. The fallen leaf does not resist, it surrenders. This reminds the woman that emotions, too, are meant to move through, not stay stuck. Sometimes emotional detox comes through conversation, not with many people, but with one safe person. Someone who listens without trying to fix. Someone who doesn't judge the messiness. This kind of emotional intimacy is rare, but deeply healing. When a woman finds that space, she must treasure it, because in sharing she sheds. Then there is movement, conscious, intentional movement. Dance, gentle yoga, stretching, even shaking the limbs in silence. The body holds unexpressed emotion, especially in the hips, jaw, and shoulders. By moving the body, we release what the mind cannot process alone. The body speaks through sensation. When we allow it space to move, it returns to equilibrium, but none of this is possible without awareness. Emotional detox begins with noticing. I am feeling bitter. I am holding tension in my chest. There's a sadness I've ignored for weeks. It is not the emotion that wounds. It is the unwillingness to feel it. Once it is named, it begins to loosen its grip. In relationship, this is life-changing. A woman who detoxes her emotions daily does not project old pain onto her partner. She does not confuse past betrayal with present love. She knows what she feels and takes responsibility for it. She does not expect others to read her mind. She speaks with clarity, not confusion. She asks for what she needs. She apologizes when necessary. This kind of emotional hygiene creates a love that breathes, not one that suffocates. This also makes her radiant. There is a glow that comes from a woman who is not carrying yesterday's weight. Her eyes are clear. Her voice is soft but grounded. Her presence feels safe. She does not need to perform kindness. It flows naturally, because she is not defending herself from her own emotions. From a spiritual lens, this is called purification. Not in the moral sense, but in the energetic sense. A purified heart is not one without pain. It is one that does not cling to pain. A woman who learns to feel and release, she becomes open, she becomes present, and in her presence others feel a desire to rise. These daily habits, pausing before reacting and cleansing the emotional body, are not glamorous. They are often invisible to the world, but they are profoundly transformative. They shape the quality of a woman's relationships, her health, her joy, her capacity to love and be loved. Because a woman who knows how to observe her emotions without drowning in them and release them without suppressing them becomes a sanctuary, not only for herself, but for everyone she encounters. A woman's ability to cultivate stillness in a noisy world is not just a spiritual luxury, it is a necessity. Silence, in today's culture, is often mistaken for absence, but true silence is full. It holds wisdom, energy, and truth. It is in this silence that a woman meets herself beyond titles, roles, or the expectations placed upon her. To sit in silence, even for a few minutes each day, is to return to what is real. It is to remember that beneath the layers of doing, there is a being that simply is. In the teachings of Eastern philosophy, silence is not emptiness, it is presence. In the Shaolin tradition, silence is cultivated not to escape life but to become more intimate with it. A woman who practices stillness begins to feel life more vividly. She notices the breath of the wind, the rhythm of her own inhale and exhale, the subtle shifts in her emotional terrain. She becomes aware of what she usually runs from: loneliness, unmet needs, the truth she avoids when distracted. Neuroscience confirms the power of stillness. When the brain is given space to rest, it does not shut down. Instead, it activates what is called the default mode network, a system involved in self-reflection, memory integration, and emotional processing. In stillness, the mind reorganizes itself. This is why moments of insight often arise not when we are trying to think, but when we are simply being. A woman may struggle with a decision for days, but in one silent morning, the answer comes, not as logic, but as knowing. Consider the woman who begins her day not with a flurry of to-do lists or phone notifications, but with 10 minutes of quiet sitting. She lights a candle. She places both hands on her heart. She listens, not to a voice outside, but to what stirs within. Some days it's calm, other days it's restlessness, but she does not fight either. She simply witnesses. Over time, something profound begins to shift. She no longer feels the need to prove herself. Her day unfolds not from urgency, but from clarity. She becomes rooted, not rushed. In relationships, this stillness becomes a sanctuary. When a woman is still within, she is not easily provoked. She does not fall into the trap of over-explaining herself, overanalyzing the moods of others, or overreacting to silence. She is anchored. Her partner feels this. Her children feel this. The people around her begin to breathe easier in her presence. Why? Because true stillness is magnetic. It radiates peace, not performance. There is a story from the Zen tradition of a student who asked his master, "How do I become wise?" The master replied, "Sit down and be quiet." The student waited, and then he asked. The master said, "Then wisdom will find you." It is simple, but not easy. In a world that rewards business, stillness is an act of rebellion. But it is in this rebellion that a woman reclaims her power. From a physiological standpoint, stillness regulates the nervous system. It activates the parasympathetic response, slowing the heart rate, softening muscle tension, lowering cortisol. This is not just relaxation, it is recalibration. It is giving the body space to recover from emotional fatigue, decision-making overload, and relational stress. But stillness is not only physical. There is also emotional stillness. This is the ability to sit with an emotion without rushing to solve it, to feel sadness without needing to escape it, to allow joy without fearing it will end. This emotional stillness deepens the woman's capacity to love without clinging, to grieve without collapsing, to be with her own heart without judgment. One woman shared how stillness transformed her approach to love. She had a pattern of overgiving, pouring into others, caretaking, managing their emotions, until she felt depleted and resentful. She thought this was love, but in silence, she began to see the roots of her behavior. It was not love, it was fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of not being enough unless she proved her worth. She cried. She wrote. She sat with this pain. And then, over time, she began to practice a new kind of giving. One that came from fullness, not from need. Her relationships changed. Not because others changed, but because her energy changed. Stillness gave her the mirror to see herself clearly. There is a moment in each day where a woman can choose noise or depth. It might be in the morning, before anyone else is awake. It might be at sunset, with the sky painting quiet stories. It might be in the car, choosing silence over the radio. These small choices shape the mind. They shape the heart. They train the soul. In Chinese medicine, the heart is seen as the emperor of the body, the seat of consciousness. But the heart cannot govern well if it is always agitated. Stillness is what allows the heart to return to wisdom. A woman who lives in emotional reactivity will always be chasing stability from the outside. But a woman who cultivates stillness begins to generate stability from within. Stillness also reveals the patterns we are trapped in. A woman may notice that every time she feels unworthy, she reaches for distraction. She texts someone, she scrolls, she eats, she shops. But in stillness, she pauses. She feels the ache, she does not numb it. And something miraculous begins to happen. The ache loses its power. It transforms, because feelings, like waves, crest and fall when they are allowed to exist. From a relational perspective, this is revolutionary. It means a woman no longer seeks a partner to rescue her from discomfort. She does not ask another person to fill her silence. She meets her own depths. And when she enters relationship from this space, she is not needy. She is whole. This creates a new kind of connection, one based on shared presence, not emotional dependency. In practical terms, how can a woman practice this daily habit of stillness? Begin with breath. Each morning, before picking up the phone or stepping into roles, sit for 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Feel the breath enter and leave your body. Don't try to control it, just witness. This anchors you in the present. Use anchor phrases. In moments of anxiety or overthinking, repeat silently, I return to stillness. This moment is enough. These mantras are not magic, but they are reminders. They bring the mind home. Create tech-free pockets. Even 10 minutes without screens can reset your nervous system. Sit by a window. Feel the sun. Drink tea. Listen to the silence between the sounds. Engage in mindful movement. Tai Chi, slow walking, gentle yoga. These are not exercises, they are moving meditations. They help integrate stillness into the body. Journal after silence. Let the silence speak through your pen. Ask, what did I feel? What truth emerged? What did I avoid? This brings depth to the stillness. Protect sacred space. Choose one spot in your home that is just for stillness. A chair, a corner, a mat. Light a candle. Let this space hold your practice. Over time, your body will associate it with peace. There is a deeper reason why stillness matters. In stillness, a woman reconnects with her intuition. The quiet voice that guides, warns, and whispers truths louder than the noise of opinions. This inner guidance cannot be heard when we are always occupied. But it is always speaking. A woman who listens to this voice becomes confident in her choices. Not because they are perfect, but because they are aligned. One young woman once confided in her teacher, I don't know if I should leave this relationship. Everyone has an opinion. My mind is spinning. The teacher asked, have you sat in silence with the question? She shook her head. Then you are only hearing the world. He replied, you have not yet heard yourself. She went away. She fasted from advice. She sat quietly every evening, asking the same question, but listening not from her fear, but from her soul. After a few weeks, clarity arose. She left, not from anger, but from truth. This is the power of stillness. In stillness, a woman also becomes a better listener to others. She does not rush to respond. She hears not only words, but what lies beneath them. She becomes attuned to tone, to silence, to body language. This makes her presence deeply healing. People feel safe with her, not because she says much, but because she listens fully. Stillness cultivates humility. It shows a woman that she does not have to know everything, fix everything, or be everything to everyone. She learns the sacred art of being. And this beingness softens the edges of her relationships. It brings tenderness where there was tension. It brings grace where there was guilt. It brings space where there was suffocation. The poet Rumi once said, there is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. This voice lives in stillness. A woman who learns to hear it walks differently. She speaks less but with more impact. She chooses fewer battles. She rests more deeply. She no longer needs external validation to feel complete. Her joy becomes quieter but more constant. There is a kind of power that comes not from how much we do, but from how deeply we can be. A woman who begins her day in stillness carries a different frequency. She is less reactive, more receptive. She is not in competition with the world. She is in communion with it. People sense this. They are drawn to it, because the world is tired of noise. It is hungry for presence. A woman who masters this habit of daily stillness no longer chases peace. She becomes it. And in becoming peace, she brings healing not only to herself, but to everyone her presence touches. A woman who learns the art of intentional solitude gains access to a power that cannot be shaken by external noise. She no longer fears being alone because her own presence becomes her sanctuary. In a society that often confuses aloneness with loneliness, she rises with a different understanding. Being alone is not a punishment. It is a privilege. It is a space where the soul breathes, where the clutter of performance falls away, and where the true self quietly, patiently emerges. This habit, this sacred choice to spend intentional time alone each day, is one of the most misunderstood practices of self-mastery. Many women grow up being told that their value lies in how well they nurture others, attend to relationships, and pour themselves out. But no cup can pour endlessly without being refilled. Solitude is not selfish. It is self-sustaining. When a woman carves out space to be alone, without distraction, without duty, she returns to herself. She steps away from the roles of mother, partner, employee, or friend, and enters the space of just being a soul, not needed, not wanted, just known by herself. In the Shaolin tradition, the monk spends hours in solitude, not to escape people, but to connect more deeply to the source from which all connection flows. The purpose is not isolation but restoration. This solitude is active. It is a choice, and it gives the practitioner the strength to return to the world with more clarity and compassion. In the same way, a woman who learns to be alone learns also how to love more cleanly. She no longer loves from longing, she loves from awareness. Neuroscience supports the value of solitude. When we engage in focused time alone, without digital stimulation or social demands, the prefrontal cortex responsible for self-regulation and